Hey everybody, welcome back to Menschwarmers. I'm Jamie. Gabe's on the line with me. He's on vacation right now. Say hi, Gabe.
Hey, I had to call in because I want to miss this party for the world.
Yeah, we're going to keep it to a short one this week. As mentioned, Gabe's calling in over the phone, and as you might already be able to tell, my voice is a little strained. I had a bit of a softball mishap last week, Gabe.
Jamie, I heard you took a fly ball to the grill.
Yeah. So, well, let me tell the story. This is a little bit of personal Jewish sports news, I guess. So you and I, or I at least, you seem to have abandoned the team this year. Just playing a recreational city softball league. Softball game on Friday nights. I was playing left field, and we were killing them. It was such a good game, and I was having an excellent game. I made great contact. I was so this is probably why I got hurt, because I was cocky, and I was in left field for an inning. I made two fly ball outs, which they weren't great fly balls or anything. It was just you've played rec league softball. Any fly ball out is wow, someone caught a ball. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So
for some people.
Yeah, so we made the first two outs of the inning right away, and then another ball was hit sort of lightly towards me. And I would say someone who is 50% faster than me could have made the play, but I just sort of realized I wasn't going to make it and sort of jogged in. And our fellow mensch, John Gruber, was playing center field, and he sort of jokingly said to me, hey, why didn't you get that one? Because I just made the two previous plays. And I was like, oh, I should have dove for it. A few more batters go. And what do you know? Another ball's hit into left field, but it's a looping ball to shallow left center. And I get a good jump on it. I'm like, well, okay, this one I can actually make. It's a hard hit ball coming in pretty hard. And I ran as hard as I could for it and just totally misplayed it. Totally misread it. Put my glove up. It didn't hit my glove, or maybe it barely touched my glove, and smacked me right in the lower left part of my mouth. And it was bad. So,
oh, no.
Yeah, it's my own fault. No lost teeth. One of them was a bit loose, and I had some stitches in my mouth, and some of my teeth are sort of braced. There's braces on a few of my teeth.
Oh, wow.
But hopefully nothing permanent. I don't think I'm going to be playing softball again for a little while at least, and nothing permanent. So that's why my mouth is my voice is a little messed up, and hopefully we'll be back to normal in a few weeks when we're back for our next episode.
Okay. That's good to know. And I think this is a week of pain and suffering, but as we know as Jews, we have to go through the pain and suffering in order to get to the joy. So
well, you got the joy. You're on vacation in the incredibly goyish confines of Cape Cod.
That's exactly right. I've been in Cape Cod for the last few days with a brief sojourn before it at the Newport Folk Festival. My father and I believe, other than his friend, we were the only Jews at the Newport Folk Festival. Presumably Fink, Bob Dylan, maybe. And I know people believe that there was a really difficult, Bob Dylan did a really controversial thing at the Folk Festival in 1964, but I'm choosing to believe that it was Be Jewish was the controversial thing to do, because after being there, it really seemed like that was the strangest thing you could be at the festival.
I don't know. I feel like a folk festival, there's going to be some words that are going to come out of my mouth a little more difficultly today. I think a folk festival has a relatively high Jews per capita. Compared to other summertime activities, compared to a monster truck rally or a rodeo or a state fair, I feel like folk festival is in our wheelhouse to a certain degree,
You'd think so, for many of them. But unfortunately, not necessarily in the Jewish... I don't know, it's the opposite of a haven, the Jewish hell of Newport, Rhode Island. We're seeing a person who wasn't blonde was a thing that made people turn their heads on the street.
Right.
And you should have seen my dad walking around in a hot tuna T-shirt. Really confused people.
I can picture it now. Is Cape Cod, I feel like Cape Cod is not particularly a Jewish vacation spot. I guess Jews from Boston have probably gone there, but I always think of the Catskills and other things as being more the Hamptons as being more Jewish.
I don't think it is. Although I was in Provincetown today, and Provincetown is known as a very, very festive place, to put it one way.
It's not 1989. You don't need to use euphemisms here.
Fine. It's got a very large and proud gay community. And I heard a lot of people speaking Hebrew.
Ah, there you go. That's great.
There's also what I thought was really clever, a clothing store for androgynous people that was called Boy Chick.
That's pretty good. That's very clever, actually. Maybe. Well, I don't want to wade too far into this to any conversations here, but Boy Chick might be the perfect, androgynous pronoun for the future.
I think so. I think maybe one day there'll be a sister podcast or a sister brother podcast in the CJN podcast network dealing with gender identity called Boy Chick.
Well, as we said, we're going to keep it relatively short today. Before we get into our main topic for the day, I should recognize, as always, that we are, of course, brought to you by the CJN Podcast Network, Canadian Jewish News, available at cjnews.com. We are available on Facebook and the CJN Podcast Facebook page, and at Twitter at Menschwarmers. Reach out, and always great to have your feedback. Now, Gabe, this is really the dog days of summer. The baseball All-Star game is come and gone. Golf majors are gone. The U.S. Open, I guess, is coming up for tennis in a couple of weeks. That's something to look forward to. And until football, basketball, hockey start up again, it's just sort of lazy days of summer. Not a lot to check in on in terms of sports news.
No, especially Jewish sports news, because we know that there aren't a ton of. We have talked about some Jews in baseball sort of ad nauseum, and there isn't necessarily a lot of new development.
But there was one item that caught my attention the other day. It was the I think it was on the occasion of the anniversary of the Lubavitcher rabbi's death. I can't remember what anniversary it was, but former NBA player Lamar Odom posted on Facebook a picture of the Rebbe's grave and talked about his lessons that he learned from the Rebbe and everything he gained from the Chabad music.
That's right, Lubavitcher Rebbe Menachem Schneerson.
That's
very
right.
Famous. Lamar Odom is famously from Queens, as well as Rabbi Schneerson, and his kaver is still currently in Queens, close to Lamar's home. So Lamar Odom put down the herbal Viagra and put on the yarmulke and went and gave a prayer.
Yeah, so that was a fun story. I mean, I don't know exactly what the details are. Like you said, there might be a neighborhood connection, and maybe there's a connection there between, Lamar and someone who is just, from Queens, or maybe he knew Lubavitchers growing up. But as you said, Lamar Odom is not really someone we associate with like deep spiritual thought or exploration so much as, almost killing himself by overdosing on some sort of herbal Viagra and being married or engaged to one of the Kardashian sisters. But that gave us the idea to look into a few other examples of non-Jewish athletes. So we're not talking about mensches per se, but mensch adjacent, non-Jewish athletes.
And these aren't our Mike Jacobs All-Stars who we've talked about a lot, which is athletes who you might think are Jewish who aren't. This is sort of the opposite of that. These are non-Jewish athletes who might think they're Jewish.
Right. So non-Jewish athletes who have interacted with Judaism in different ways. So we found a few other stories that we want to talk about. A few of these are older. Some of them are more recent. The first one we found going back a while is about Reggie White, who was, the sort of minister of defense, a legendary defensive lineman. I think he had the record for sacks for a long time until Strahan broke it, right?
I think that's right.
But he died at a young age, tragically, one of what was likely, football-related death. But we found an old article on Yahoo Sports that said Reggie White, before he died, was studying the Torah.
And was he studying the Torah for like a spiritual reason, or was he studying the Torah because he just wanted to study the Torah? Like, was the Torah a specific thing that he was interested in?
Yeah, apparently his study was quite in-depth, and it wasn't just trying to understand the Bible and what it said, but really going deep into the language itself. Apparently he poured himself into learning Hebrew, and Hebrew at the time that it was spoken in the biblical time, so that he could understand the Bible in the original writing, that he could understand the original Torah, and it was a way that he sort of was trying to get some spiritual peace, I think, and to learn as much about it as he could. So interesting story. I mean, unfortunately, he died before he was able to sort of take his studies to another level, as far as we can tell. It's not clear where they went, but certainly an interesting story about a football great being involved in Judaism. And another football related story is a story from just a couple years ago about former Pittsburgh Steeler, current Oakland Raider, Antonio Brown, who bought a Miami mansion for $6.6 million. And what did that mansion have in it, Gabe?
Tell me. Let me guess. A Torah?
Not a Torah, but it did have a fully functional synagogue in it. He didn't no real explanation of who he bought it from, but, obviously plenty of Jewish millionaires in Miami. This is a nice pad that he bought for himself back in 2016. I believe he still owns it. And it has a full synagogue in it. There's pictures of it. I mean, it's quite nice. It's a beautiful mansion. There's a bima with Hebrew writing and whatchamacallit, there's chandeliers and things like that. And he was asked about it by Complex Magazine. And here's what Antonio Brown said: "I got a lot of Jewish friends, and a synagogue is where you bless up." So it's a good place to hang. I assume he has Jewish hangers-on, an agent or what have you, and it's good to have a synagogue at home.
That's true. Who do we think people. Antonio Brown's Jewish friends are?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think there are any Jewish members of the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's obviously a large Jewish Pittsburgh community. We've talked about that before, but he's not there anymore. Maybe Mark Davis. Mark Davis is Jewish, is the owner of the Oakland Raiders.
That's true, the owner of the Oakland Raiders. But the house is in Miami, so you wonder maybe he's got a Mickey Arison connection somewhere. Thinking of Miami Jews in sports. This is a tough question because I'm not entirely sure. I mean, we don't know a lot about Antonio Brown's personal life or his Jewish life, so we'll have to take him at his word that he's got a lot of Jewish friends that come over to pray, I guess.
Just to bless up.
Yeah, let's say your buddy, you had a non-Jewish friend. Say this non-Jewish friend is very successful in his chosen field, and you say, Jamie, you got to come over to my house. I got a great new house. I want to have you over. And you went over and he went, hey, here's my synagogue. Do you like it? How would you react?
I'd be like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Why do you have a synagogue?
You're right.
I mean, exactly. I'd be very impressed by it. I would assume that he didn't build it himself and that he just inherited it from somebody else, which is the case in Antonio Brown. But I would definitely be taken by it. And I think it's unfortunate that I hope that he uses it for something beyond just sitting, just having it to be you should use it as part of the functional space. But I feel like once you set up the space as a synagogue, it's hard to convert it into something else, like maybe a home theater or something like that.
Right. You have the pews used for something.
And you could use it as a chapel. I don't know how religious he is, but you could use it as any kind of chapel. But it would be very cool.
That bima could be any kind of dais.
Yeah. On to our next non-Jew. We have the very well-known cheater and very poor baseball announcer, Alex Rodriguez, who, Gabe, I know you're a big fan of his current relationship.
Oh, I love A-Rod.
You're a big fan of his current relationship with Jennifer Lopez. She stopped by Baseball Tonight the other day, the Sunday night baseball broadcast that he does, and brought him a cake that nobody ate, which was very funny. It was his 50th birthday, and
A-Rod's 50?
Yeah, so she looks amazing. It's unbelievable how
she's
she
50.
looks for 50.
He's not 50. I don't believe A-Rod.
No, you're right. He's not 50. It was like his 43rd birthday or something like that.
Right.
Maybe older. We're going to have our producer fact check this one. Anyways, you may recall that before J-Lo, one of the people that A-Rod dated was Madonna, and Madonna famously associated with New Age Kabbalah learning. And there was a period where A-Rod had been spotted at the Hollywood Kabbalah Center going in and doing some Kabbalah studies. So despite not being Jewish, not really having any Kabbalah, being a sort of esoteric thing even within the Jewish world, A-Rod was studying it for a bit, at least with Madonna. And we fact check, A-Rod is 44 years old. So I assume that's an auspicious number. We'll need some of our Kabbalistic numerology students to inform us of the significance of his 44 years.
So it's interesting you say that, because at the time we are recording right now, Mr. Aroyd, Alex Rodriguez himself, put out an Instagram today. And the Instagram, he is leaning over a hotel room balcony over the beach of Tel Aviv with the caption, "The Motherland, Israel." And there's the emoji of the Israeli flag. First time here.
Oh, wow.
Period. I'm in love. Hashtag energy off the charts.
That's great. Okay, so an even more recent connection between between Alex Rodriguez and the Jewish people. Alex Rodriguez, not Jewish as far as we can tell. Like some Jews, spends too much time in Miami, and sometimes that gets him in trouble. That's gotten him in trouble in the past, but not Jewish, but Jew adjacent in a few ways.
Well, A-Rod, I believe my understanding is I see a new post of A-Rod with his daughters that J-Lo has a show in Tel Aviv tomorrow, and they're there for the show, watching the rehearsals, sort of taking in the sights, seeing all the people. His final caption is, quote, "What an amazing time we are having on my first trip to Israel. The people have been wonderful and have such energy. I will definitely be back and recommend visiting this incredible country. Heart." How many of you have been to Israel, and how was your experience? And that post currently has 4,619 comments.
Wow. I wonder when a celebrity or like an influencer, someone who has like a lot of engagement on social media, like asks for replies. It's like, I understand the idea of like wanting to generate like, commentary and like a discussion or something like that. Yeah. Engagement, right? But it's like, is anyone from their team being like, "Oh man, I can't," like, I want to know if they're like social media managers, like, "Oh man, I can't believe they did an engagement post. Now I have to read all these replies. I have to go through these stupid things because like we're going to do some other bit with, what the feedback was or something like that."
Or is somebody going to go to A-Rod and say, "Here are the 5 most interesting stories of people said of their time in Israel"?
I got to figure that all these people have like a phone that, doesn't get alerts or anything like that. Like they're not reading their comments or mentions or anything like that because it's like, there's just too much, right? But I'm saying like, there might be something genuinely interesting, right? Like there might be something that A-Rod would actually like to know from people out there, from his fans or from other, just the general public. And it's like, how could he possibly engage with people without just getting like 99% of the comments being inane nonsense?
Where else is he going to get a recommendation? Where else is he going to get a recommendation for a really good hummus bar on the beach in Tel Aviv? He won't find it otherwise. He's got to hear from the people who live in Israel.
Yeah, exactly.
You need the local flavor.
Well, moving on to our last story that we have now of a Jew adjacent or Judaism adjacent athlete. This is a story from the Jerusalem Post from 2015, and it's about a Hebrew tattoo on the arm of one NBA champion, former MVP Steph Curry.
Future Hall of Famer Stephen Curry.
Certainly. So it says that Steph Curry's mother had been studying Hebrew for 5 years, and he and his wife, Aisha, got matching tattoos that read, "Love never failed to be." And that is written in Hebrew, and that's from the Bible. But interestingly, that Bible verse is from 1 Corinthians, which of course is one of the books of the New Testament.
It's not a Tanakh, it's a Bible.
I looked this up before. 1 Corinthians was originally written, as the name would imply, Corinth, obviously a city in Greece. It was originally written in Greek. There's no reason to think it was ever in Hebrew or anything like that, and it never would have been translated into Hebrew like for typical study because Jews don't follow the New Testament. Like, and even like a Jew who is interested in the New Testament, I don't think would be necessarily that interested in Corinthians, which I feel like is just the book that people use like verses from to read at people's wedding. So for whatever reason, he got it translated into Hebrew and tattooed on his arm.
In your life of going to Hebrew school and growing up, did you ever did anyone ever discuss Corinthians in any way?
No. Like, I think there probably would have been maybe at some level, there was some acknowledgement that, like, yes, there are other books of the Bible that, Christian people read and think are holy and that describe the life and times of Jesus and things around that. But no one would have been like, and one of those books is Corinthians, which, again, as far as I know, just contains, like, sappy love poetry. And I'm basing that on, like, seeing people read it at weddings in TV shows and movies and nothing else. No one has ever mentioned, like, do you know what I mean? Like, how like people read like the Book of Job because it's like it's a good book. Like Time put it on their list of like 100 best novels or something like that. But no one was like, you should read Corinthians for your edification and like to understand religion better.
Yeah, oh, of course. And I don't think anybody says to, oh, you never hear your rabbi say, remember Corinthians. We hear that Corinth tells us not to be greedy or whatever. No, you hear it in sort of the sappy, non-religious times.
Right, exactly. It's not exactly the Sermon on the Mount.
But why Hebrew? Why would Steph do it in Hebrew?
I have no idea. It wasn't really clear. I mean, it just sort of said, his mom had been learning it. And I feel like there might be a, sort of, not exactly a fetishization, but like this idea that like, oh, it's a spiritual language or something like that. And like, okay, it is. But it's sort of funny. Like, I feel like no one these days, no North American person these days is getting Chinese symbols tattooed on their arms the way they might have like 15 or 20 years ago. And this feels very akin to that, where it's just like, I can't read it. I don't know what it means, but it looks cool. And like, it's sort of spiritual. And like, it seems a little outdated. And I don't know. I mean, Steph Curry is like a notably corny guy. So it's possible this is just fitting with his brand of being a very corny dude. I mean, getting matching love tattoos with your wife is pretty corny in the first place. And I say this as a wife guy.
Especially in a religion you're not a part of. In the language of a religion you're not a part of. It's interesting you bring that up about sort of a lovey-dovey part of Corinthians. My bar mitzvah portion, I didn't understand this at the time, but this is a totally true story. My whole bar mitzvah portion from Samuel, the book of Samuel, was just a long list of how King David bought and sold all of his concubines and what his concubines did with him. So it would be like, oh, and King David laid with Bathsheba, and it was good. And then King David laid with Elisheva, and it was good. And then King David laid with Jezebel of Bethlehem, and it was good. And that was my whole bar mitzvah portion. And I didn't know what it all meant at the time. But apparently my grandfather thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard in his life.
That's great. I respect that nobody really understood it except probably like the rabbi and like a few old guys who know every parsha, and we're just like, yeah, this is the sexy part of the Haftorah here.
Right, exactly. This is the fucked up Haftorah. That's exactly
the
what
muftir. A muftir, we're told by our more educated producer, correcting our liturgy, liturgical Judaism. Yeah. There's some parts. I mean, there's lots of parts of the Bible that have a lot of sex in them. I feel like that's the part that is more exciting when you're a kid. You just gotta dig and find it. That's like every part of the Bible that like features in a Leonard Cohen song is like from the real sexy parts of the Bible.
Yeah, and it's something you don't hear like that often. You hear about Abraham and you hear about David. But you don't be like, oh yeah, there's just a list of David's concubines. Yeah, he was the king. Kings had concubines back then. And they make like a 12-year-old kid while the rabbi shoves his hands into his face and hopes that the kid doesn't really understand it too much and it's Haftarah.
Well, it's good to be the king, as Mel Brooks once said.
I guess.
I think we should call it there. I'm sort of at the end of how much I can talk without biting into my lip too much. Hopefully I'm back to full fighting strength, and off the canvas in a few weeks.
I have one more a story of a Jewish athlete I think we should follow. I went to a Cape Cod League baseball game the other night.
Oh yeah, tell our listeners a little bit about what the Cape Cod League is.
Yeah, so I saw a game, Harwich versus Chatham, two towns in Cape Cod. The Cape Cod Baseball League is an NCAA-affiliated wood bat baseball league. For those who don't know, NCAA baseball, very high-level baseball, is played with metal bats. So it's slightly easier than the game you'd see players play in the major leagues or in the minor leagues. But the most elite NCAA players are recruited to play in what's called the Cape Cod League, where all of these towns in Cape Cod each have a local team. Players bill it with local families. They're not paid, but they play in a wood bat league. It's a level higher than their NCAA baseball, and they get experience facing the best pitchers, the best hitters, sort of like an all-star league of the entire NCAA. There's 8 or so teams. And on one of the games, the team I saw, there was a guy named Michael Rothenberg, who is
that
the
sounds
Duke
pretty Jewish.
University catcher. It does sound quite tribal. Just a little backpack. Michael Rothenberg is from Boca Raton, Florida.
Oh, come on. You had me at Boca.
He is son of Mark and Susanna Rothenberg. And
Say no more.
His brother Matt and a sister Ariel, and his brother goes to Harvard. So
Okay.
I don't really need to hear much more about our new buddy Boca Mike. And we'll be following Boca Mike just because I feel connected to him. He's a sophomore at Duke. He's 6'3", 210. That's about Jamie size, so that's one of the larger Jews I've ever known.
That's Jamie before Jamie found food and alcohol size.
So we'll find Mike. We'll follow his career through the next few years. Hopefully he gets drafted and stays long. Maybe he'll have a career like Tommy Jew, but be actually Jewish.
Sure.
And we'll follow him along.
Are the Cape Cod League players? Are they guys who could get drafted next year? Is that how it is? It's like they're sophomores, freshmen.
Yes. So some of them have already been drafted but not signed. Because they're looking for a higher position or just want to continue to go back to college instead of being drafted or instead of signing after being drafted. So there's a lot. There were a couple of kids from the Vanderbilt College World Series winning team in the league I was reading about who have been drafted already but elect to go back for the championship or maybe to repeat before signing with their teams. There was actually, but it's also a league for players, sort of a showcase with wood bats or scouts who are about to get drafted. So they either get drafted during the Cape Cod League season, at which point if they choose to sign, they'll stop playing, or they'll get drafted next season, like you said earlier. There was a guy we saw who was incredibly wild. He had some Goyish name, Austin Watson or Austin Vanderbilt or something. And he was 6'7" and 290 pounds, and he threw the ball 97 miles an hour. And it was a tiny ballpark, and when he threw it, people would gasp. This dude was a unit.
That's a big hoss.
And then he hit two batters during that inning, and both of them looked like it was a lot of pain. And I went up. It's like a city park, right? There's no real barrier. There's just people hanging out watching. So I went up to the guy on deck, and I said, "Hey, man, what's it like going to face a guy who's this big?" And he looked at me and went, "It's not fun."
Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for more information about Boca Mike, and maybe we'll reach out to him and get some, a confirmation that he's Jewish. But I think we're pretty good there. And if not, he's a real Mike Jacobs All-Star with that background.
There's a hint to our producer Alex to reach out to the Duke media office to see if Boca Mike wants to be on our podcast.
Yeah, or maybe there's some good Duke lacrosse Jewish players we can talk about. We're always looking for Jews in the freak sports to think about a little bit. Let's leave it there for today. We'll be back in a few weeks. Again, follow us as always on Facebook and Twitter, Menschwarmers, CJN Podcast Network. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. And if you guys know any other stories of non-Jewish athletes who have engaged in Judaism in one way, whether it's a stupid tattoo, Torah study, or something else, feel free to reach out and let us know. We're always looking for more information, and anything interesting, we'll put it on the air.
Please do. We'd love to hear it. And thanks so much for listening, and we hope to see you soon.